We're really excited for this panel discussion. I'm Brent Thurgood. I'm the head of people at Enerflo, and we just have a few quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Today's session will be recorded, and we will share the recording after the event. You're all muted by default, and while we don't have time for in-depth Q&A, you can still feel free to drop questions in the Q&A section here. The panel may or may not be able to get to those questions, but you are welcome to, and we'll address them as we can and if we can. And then finally, you can return to the event lobby at any time, which is that page right before you got led into this session, and you can see what's available for the rest of the day and tomorrow, and you can always return back and you can even watch from there. So we're excited to have you here. Without further ado, let me quickly introduce our panel and our moderator. So our panelists today are Bardia Andalib he's the co-founder and CEO of Arealytic. We have Jason Steinberg, who's the CEO of Scanify. Jeremy McHale, who's a chief product officer at SunRebel, and Jayant Samani, the senior vice president and GM of digital business at SolarGraph. So we've got a lineup here. We also have our co-founder at Enerflo and CEO, Pat Bennett. I'm turning it over to you now, Pat. It's all up to you guys. Have a good time.
Thanks. Yeah, no, we will. We got some great topics to jump into here, and thanks guys for joining. We did send the invite out to a couple other design tools in the space that weren't able to make it, but glad for the ones that are here. And I think all of you guys have a pretty unique perspective that we can share as we go through this. I want to just jump right in and probably start with one of the biggest trends we've seen over last year is TPO. And obviously a lot of people having to shift and figure out, okay, how do I sell TPO now? But I think what reps are finding out too is, oh crap, design details, production, these things mean a lot more with TPO because someone's actually going to underwrite this and it can lead to change orders and lead to issues as well. I think you guys all have a pretty unique perspective on this. And so I want to just go around the horn here and get really what trends are you guys seeing? What adjustments have people had to make? And then from a design tool standpoint, how have you thought about product to better support reps when it comes to third-party owned and modeling? Jason, I'll probably end it with you because you're more on the back end, which I think gives you a pretty unique perspective. You're sometimes cleaning up what happens on the front end with some reps with their design tools. So maybe let's start with Jayant. I think you guys have a unique perspective, obviously in-phase SolarGraph, but I know this is something you guys have been working on a next gen for a while, and I'm sure TPO was a big part of that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that trend and how people should be thinking about designs as it relates to TPO?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Pat, and then Enerflo team inviting me. I really appreciate. Regarding your question on the TPO, actually, so one of the key things, because of the obvious reason that we see, because of the interest rates and things which are seen in the market, actually, and that it makes more sense to have the TPO based selling than the conventional loans or cash or so. We all understand that fact. But the key benefit actually that is trend that is happening in the market, especially because of the US manufacturing. There are third parties, those who are owning these kind of systems. There could be additional incentives that could be availed and understood how exactly to structure those deals from the concept of the manufacturing incentive that could be available also. I think that will shape up and things to determine how exactly that selling happens actually, how that sharing, whether it goes into TPO, whether it goes into the homeowners eventually, and how that whole pricing structure that could be determined because of these kind of changes also. So one of that trend that I see going to be emerging over the next 1 year or so. And in addition to the conventional aspect, as Pat, you already pointed it out, that somebody is signing up, then they need to have a very accurate shading model. They have to have a design. They have to have a very accurate production that they can bank on. So the accuracy becomes a lot more important in terms of understanding the whole modeling.
Yeah, appreciate that. Domestic manufacturing's come up in a few other panels today as we've been chatting about it. So that's a unique perspective for sure. Let's go to SunRebel. Jeremy, you guys spinning out from an installer. I bet you guys have unique perspectives there, but yeah, what have you guys seen or what adaptations have you had to make with your tool as you think about third-party owned compared to finance?
Yeah, it's a great question, Pat. As far as what we've had to do as a tool, accuracy, 100%. Anything we can do to fine-tune our tools to get better data or imagery so that we can make sure that we are accurate, that's basically what we can do on our side. What I'm seeing, though, and calling back to your call out to Jason, cleaning things up on the back end, I really feel like it's an EPC-based decision on how they want to move forward. They can invest a lot of time, effort, money into becoming proficient and building accurately and making sure they've got site survey photos or whatever additional information they need. And if they've done it, most of our tools are accurate and those are bankable estimates. The issue is when you're not using quality imagery or you're not making sure that the design is accurate to the actual build. And then you're going to have all these back-end change orders. So if you as an organization, as an installer, want to invest more on the back end and make sure that, hey, after we complete a site survey, we're very quickly going to make sure that everything is cool and that we're going to do any change orders right away. That's a great way to run your business. Making sure it's done right on the front end is a great way to run your business. So I think the tools are adapting to meet the needs of the TPO market, but I think it still is very much an individual contractor decision on how they want to handle that internally, because there's more than one solution that will work.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. And obviously you take 10 different people and throw them on a design tool, which gives them ability to move things around, knock out trees. You could come up with 10 different designs, right? The tool can only do so much, and then the user has to do some of that. And I think we'll get to some of that responsibility as we jump into compliance a little later, because I think that's another discussion point. But I think what's interesting is you were talking about accuracy. A lot of installers, even during the finance period, they were trying to put production guarantees like in their contract, and TPO pretty much is a production guarantee every time. So you have to worry about that level of accuracy on every deal. Barty, what about you? What are you guys seeing? How has that affected your guys' roadmap and how you've thought about it with the rise of TPO?
I think we're all experiencing it very similarly, but maybe looking at it from different approaches. Our approach is like looking at for the data first, right? So right now, the inaccuracies in the data is one of the core problems that we see, right? Is it actually as accurate to real life scenario? Depending on the data source, it could have the elevation, could not. Can you derive the type of information that you need to get a proper, accurate shading report? We're trying, if it's possible with the advancements in AI, just to try to solve for a few of those with other models and trying to build upon that, understanding the problem. But definitely making sure that the shading is as representative possible and making sure that the setup is connected to facilitate all the different hardware needs. So there's a lot of different variables, and I think we're all trying to drive towards the same North Star, is try to get it as accurate as possible. And I think that's pretty much the best goal that we can do here.
Yeah. That makes sense. All the inputs, trying to get them as accurate as possible for sure. So Jason, coming to you, for those not familiar with Scanifly, you guys actually fly a drone, and that's what's going to be used to find pretty accurate modeling. I've heard some stats or things about you guys finding ways to limit change orders and some of the issues that may have happened up front. So what's your guys' perspective and how you think of your tool and as it relates to some of these other tools we're talking to, which do more of that upfront kind of proposal-based design?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. And thanks for having me join the panel. For us, I think our tool is really made for the era of TPO. With loans and financing, you're often underwriting the homeowner, right? Whereas TPO and leases, you're underwriting the system itself. I like to first think about what is accuracy, because I think a lot of people claim accuracy. And I think it's somewhat in the eye of the beholder or eye of the installer. For us, accuracy is revision-free projects. It's perfect fitment on install day. It's getting on-site data before the install day so that what you designed automatically fits when you go to install it. So it's informed our product recently because we want to make our product more intuitive. Our origin is our drone-based design and engineering tools, which installers often use on the back end. But we're seeing more and more installers want to incorporate that earlier into their process. And so making sure we have intuitive tools. We have a new feature called Simple Design, which makes for a much more approachable UI to all of our different design products, and making sure it's really digestible by anyone, especially salespeople. In terms of where we're going and what we're thinking about, I think we're seeing more and more contractors need to have reliable milestone payments, and salespeople want reliable commissions. And so specifically around the M2 payment, you want to know that the shading report is perfectly accurate, and which means that the production of the shading is what's going to be actually when the system's energized is what was in the forecast, so that you know you can get those payments coming through. And so continuing to elevate the quality of our software and just software in general so that you can get reliable payments, reliable commissions. I think that's how TPO is influencing our market and pushing contractors to think more actively about this as it relates to their overall solar workflow.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's that balance of trying to find how much work do you want to put into it up front or do you want to do after? And back to Jeremy's comment of some of that is EPC preference. I know groups that when they do their first knock, they do a site survey. And when they come back on that second appointment, they've already been on the roof. And it's some people are like, that's crazy, but yeah, their change order rate is much lower. So it's what are you solving for? So as there are some questions coming in around AI, and that's actually what I wanted to take it on the next one. Back to you, Giant. Is you guys started out obviously more traditional tool, outline the roof. We've seen a lot. And I know you guys have been pushing for AI. And just curious, as we're thinking about can't turn on the news without hearing about AI. We've heard in other panels today, AI. And I think people are still wondering, when is AI going to do the perfect design for me? So as a rep, I have zero responsibility. And I'm curious your guys' thoughts on how far are we away from that? Should I be waiting for that day or should I think of it more as a co-pilot? So if you could just touch on your guys' path to AI and some of the challenges you think might be there or some of the breakthroughs that we're seeing now would be great.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for the question. I hope I'm audible. Actually, one of the questions was that I'm not very audible, so I'm just putting my speaker microphone right next to me.
Sounds a little better. Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. Couple of things which are happening in the market. I just want to make sure that we understand, especially in the solar and storage industry, that one changes the NEM3 phenomena, which kind of dramatically changed the way the solar is designed from the perspective that with the battery inclusion or so. Some of you might be familiar with what's happening in the international markets, such as Netherlands or in Germany. There are things such as dynamic tariff and those kind of things are getting introduced, which basically incentivizing you in some cases to consume also. And when you consume, you have to stop solar, you have to basically make sure that your batteries are fully charged. So the point basically I'm making is the way solar was sold in the past as a purely a production unit has become more like a home energy management system now, with the concept of solar production, battery storage, consumption management, when to import from the grid, when to export the grid. So it has, and with the EV coming into the play actually, which is right now unidirectional and very soon it will become bidirectional. It's adding to the complexity of this thing. And these kind of a problem cannot be solved without adopting a comprehensive view of having an AI into the picture. That means a system that's going to be deployed has to really forecast what my production is going to be. And based on that, I decide what to put in the battery and what to export. Or what my consumption forecast is going to be based on the number of members into this home, based on the weekdays or so on. And that need to be modeled into the tool for a comprehensive understanding of how exactly what you are actually designing is actually going to be deployed and behave exactly the same way what you designed it for. Because it's not just now limited to a panel's production, it is basically over the entire home energy management system. So in that context, I would say that AI is big into not only, of course, we are doing things such as the image recognition, obstacle recognition. I am also doing things such as learning from the data that is already present from systems which are in production today, that what kind of losses that you are seeing in those systems, what kind of behavior of a particular module is going to be over the periods of so. And that data can be a very predictive and useful, not only the first year production forecast, but also the multi-year production forecast. So from that perspective, the AI changes are needed across the board for the HEMS deployment, for the energy accuracy production, which is required from the past historical data, be it weather, be it an actual production or so. And also, of course, from an ease of use perspective, that's how I'm seeing, because what we are doing actually, as far as the tools are concerned, they're just not the proposal tool. They are basically proposal, design, electrical, permit plans, that everything can be generated from those tools. And that requires a huge amount of AI and machine learning from a data perspective, as well as from the imaging side of the activity.
Yeah, no, thanks for touching on that. Yeah, I think there's a combination of AI used in the design tool itself, but also once the system is turned on, how is it going to be used? And I know batteries being more the brain of the system now. How a consumer uses it could completely right of what was modeled for them in the beginning. So a lot of those data inputs and assumptions are super important. Yeah, Jeremy, so on your side, similar where you started with a tool that kind of more traditional and how it models out. I know you guys are thinking through and trying to figure out AI transition, but how is that impacting how you guys are thinking about your tool?
Yeah, it's a great question. We went through an interesting AI kind of experience. Early last year, we spent a lot of time and a lot of money building out AI automatic panel placement, a few of those AI features into SunRebel. And once we finally did it, then TPO said, "Hey, we need more accurate shading." And so we had to basically scratch it and kind of start the whole process over. So the good and the bad of that, it was a very good learning experience for us. It opened our eyes to a lot of things. Obviously, the bad, it wasted essentially wasted a lot of time and development money. But now we have a much better understanding of what we're heading towards. And with being one of those more traditional and mark up the roof and do all those things, it's much easier to train and build those AI programs when you have those steps in your process. Now, I look at tools like Aeralytics. They've already got the end-to-end shading, panel placement. They essentially have the AI end-to-end. And to any of those who have been able to get that figured out and beat the rest of us to that, I think they've got all the advantage for them as a business as well as for their users. That being said, I do think we're seeing huge jumps, and within the next 2 years, I think all of us will be on a, level playing ground, if you will. I personally am seeing and working with a lot of guys who are doing open source development with geospatial data and satellite imagery, and basically trying to make this more easily accessible. So one of the things that I see coming that I think is going to have a huge impact through AI is along the lines of what Janet was talking about. It's going to touch every single piece of this from design and proposal all the way through end user eventually. And part of that now that I think is going to have the biggest impact on sales and installation in the industry is we're going to see a big shift. When the AI can do everything a sales rep can do, then consumers are going to go directly through that AI and cut out that sales rep to try and cut out costs, to try and cut out questions. And they're going to be able to utilize that to self-serve themselves and move forward with whichever type of product it is that they want. And so I think that while it is a huge advantage overall, I think that those who are in sales positions need to make sure they're doing what they can to ensure they're bringing added value beyond just presenting numbers and presenting data to customers. So I think it's a double-edged sword, just like we see it in the fast food. It's going to take away jobs. I think we are going to see that in every aspect, but it's up to us to decide if we use that to our advantage for the greater good or if we let it scare us off and make us run away from the industry.
Yeah, you're bringing up a really good point. And so as I turn to you, Bardia, as Jeremy mentioned, you guys went AI first with your tool. That's what you really wanted to solve before you came to market. But how far are we from replacing the rep with AI? What are some of the challenges and what are some of the things that we still have ways to figure out?
Thanks, Jeremy, for the kind words. We got a lot to learn. But truth be told, guys, it depends what you want to solve for with AI. I wish AI could just be the silver bullet that is going to solve everybody's dreams. Once we get there, we're in a different world, guys. So that's more towards AGI. But I think every single one of us will address the problem differently and the outcomes will be a little bit different. So depending on what kind of models and how you're training your models, how you're fine-tuning your models and what you're creating from there will solve different ways. You might need like a NLP specifically, or maybe a computer vision approach, depending on what it is. But it's actually, in my opinion, how you use the AI is going to be the important part. If you're able, I think one of my professors said it really great. Is I imagine it's the knob on a stereo system. Right now, when you're cranking it manually or like with the AI that we have right now, it's at 0 to 1. But when you crank it full force, you're able to do some incredible things. So depending on what you solve for and how you solve for it, I think you're going to do some spectacular things. But I do need to be realistic saying that it's not going to be solved overnight because it's not just one algorithm that you need in order to solve an end-to-end problem, right? It could be multiple different solutions to solve for one problem. So I think we're at this early stages to say, what's the problem? How can we define it? How can we really solve for it? And then how can we apply AI to realistically get to our end goal? And what is that end goal is going to be the interesting part for everybody.
Yeah, it's a great point. If we're thinking about AI, it's what Janet was saying too. It's how the actual system works and how once it's actually installed, how does it optimize? You're talking about AI and it's got to trace the roof, and then it's got to a different AI model has to figure out production. A different AI model has to figure out other assumptions. So yeah, it's definitely a complex problem to solve. Jason, what has your guys' path been and how does AI look on the drone side and what can we expect from you guys?
Yeah, I think we're seeing AI transform every aspect of the project lifecycle. Where as it relates to the back end, right, when we sit there, we look towards the front end on the sales side, we're seeing it really inform the design process from a remote setting perspective. I think it could also facilitate a more active top of funnel on the sales side experience. So direct to consumer or online quoting. And in some ways, it could level the playing field for certain selling styles. That being said, solar is a home improvement project when you're talking about DG for the most part. So for now, and I think the foreseeable future, how many home improvement projects are going to be done exclusively by AI? I'm not as sure. On the back end, as it relates to drone site surveying and final engineering work, we're seeing AI have a lot of great implications for automatic keep out detection, maximizing panel placement using geometry and computer vision. We released something really exciting that we call high value regions, which optimizes the mapping of tree density and height to ensure you get accurate shading. And obviously on the op side, you're seeing some triaging occur. But I just want to end with some comments on limitations of AI, right? A lot of AI, and Bardia can probably inform this best of all of us, but a lot of the AI, a lot of the AI, I think, is in the selling experience is informed by LiDAR data, satellite imagery, and airplane data, right? As the kind of slew of geospatial remote data that's out there. And there are limitations to that, not just with the data that's currently been collected, but also the implications of government regulation on resolution of that data or frequency of that data, military rules related to capturing remote data. And I do think that with all the things going on geopolitically right now, I think there are implications for how much geospatial data and the frequency and resolution of that data becomes available to the common consumer good, which will create a limitation on AI. And for us on the back end, we're seeing TPO rejection rates, going back to your first question, being in the roughly 40 to 50% range. And the vast majority of those are from shading analysis, from remote imagery. And so I think AI has a ton of implications for the whole value chain. I think it's going to be great for the sales side in particular, especially in this generation of I need a quote quickly and I need to be in the ballpark of what we're paying for here. But I think especially on the back end, as it relates to minimizing revisions and change orders, you still are going to need an on-site experience to compensate for some of that remote AI selling experience. So you can minimize revisions, maximize reliable financing that you're going to hopefully achieve. So those are some of the ways that we see it and we think about it.
Yeah, Barty, you want to chime in on some?
Yeah, one really cool thing that I love about AI. So AI has been around forever, right? The calculator that we have on our phones is AI, right? But it's the advancements that we've actually seen. So typically how we're solving it today may not be how we actually solve it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
If our goal is to get to accuracy, and currently with the current ways that we get accuracy is, let's say, A, B, C, realistically, I think there's new advancements that are happening that might actually end up with X, Y, Z being a much better and faster solution. It's the advancements in the actual algorithms and the compute power that's coming behind it that I'm really excited about, that I'm seeing. But it'd be interesting. Like I said, I think everybody's going to get somewhere, right? But they're probably going to get there differently.
Yeah, sure. And the combination of it could be very well, like the process and the chain. It could be just as important of each individual piece for sure. So let's jump to compliance. There is a lot of talk about compliance. We see all the AG stories out there. We found out that some congressmen are hanging out in subreddit forums now, like learning about solar and trying to figure out how guys are being shady, whatever. But speaking of the place of design tools in the topic here, where should a rep, if I'm a rep selling, where should I draw the line between what is the design tool responsible for and what am I responsible for? Because I don't think we can say, hey, design tool is 100% reliable for everything, or to say, hey, rep, you have to do all the work yourself. So maybe we'll start with Jeremy, just from your guys' install background and your participation with the RSA as well, and working through some of these regulation things we've been talking about. How do you try to think about that? Of, okay, even though I might build the product and I could do X, Y, Z, what do I still want to ensure the rep is doing? And what is their responsibility to make sure that this is accurate, to make sure it is good for the homeowner? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we're trying to do is really it comes down to the sales reps and the contractors. That's who most of these penalties fall on. So us as a platform, it's a little bit more loosey-goosey, if you will. We have a little more flexibility in what we choose to do and not do. That being said, we are doing everything we can to first and foremost, verify rep identity to make sure that we're doing anything we can there. Are there ways they can manipulate that? Are there ways they can lie and deceive? Absolutely. Like they can, if there's more than one guy working together, they can always figure a way around it. But we're trying to put everything in place to make them go through the proper steps. When it comes to deceiving the customers, I would say it doesn't really matter which tool they're using. Any of them on the panel here or any that are not here today, we all have put our own tools through the ringer, right? I am 100% confidence in the accuracy of Sun Rebel production estimates. That being said, I have people who have built the same house and we've gotten wildly different estimates. And it's because of how the build is done. So I think it really comes down to you as the rep, you as the contractor, and then even, yes, us as the platforms, knowing what we have to be compliant with and doing everything in our power to make sure that our steps, our best practices are aligned with that. But ultimately, it really is on the rep and the contractor to decide how they want to do it. Because again, back to change orders, maybe a rep's not trying to be dishonest or deceive or not be compliant in any way, and he just does a terrible job building a 3D shading analysis. That's going to cause a change order. It is what it is. And so it's better for them to make sure they know the variables, the inputs that they need to, and just be honest with those inputs, because no one's going to get paid if you lie about shading and it gets caught. The customer's not going to move forward if there's a significant change order. The sales rep's not going to get a commission. The contractor's not going to get an install. SunRebel's a free tool. We don't get monetized unless those jobs see funding. And it really doesn't help anyone to try to be deceptive. So I would say for us, we're just really trying to make it easy for everyone, whatever their role might be, to be fully transparent with their customers and give them the best data we have access to.
Cool. So let's shift to you, Bardia. I've heard you talk about your tools, a Copilot, more for assisting and helping. And I've heard you also talk about like trust but verify, right? Like the AI, hey, it's going to get you there, but you need to verify. So what are some of those things you'd hope a sales rep would do when he's in the home, even though AI may have done some of it for him? What are some of those things?
The good thing is like you're seeing a 3D representation of what it's supposed to be. So at least they're not just looking at an image and trying to infer data. Our goal is to say, hey, visually take a look at this and let your eyes judge. And like you said, like similar to autonomous driving, yes, it drives autonomously right now, but you still need to monitor it. You still need to make sure there's not going to be a point where it's going to be guaranteed because there's too many different types of variables. And even if it has to infer something, it may hallucinate and do something else. So trust but verify, right? But verify that it looks correct. So some of the things that you could do is, okay, listen, if a tree is not there, make sure that you actually draw the tree in, forecast the tree in there, right? Because how data providers collect their data is a limitation to AI. There are other algorithms that definitely can help support certain things like that. But the only thing that we can do here is build AI to help validate and to build the tools so that the sales rep can actually see what they're doing and not lie to the homeowner, because the homeowner should also see the same thing that the sales rep sees. So if they're seeing a difference for some reason, they too can see it and then they can judge. So transparency is one of the things that we really believe in, but there's only so much that you could do to discredit dishonesty. So at the end of the day, it's the sales rep's responsibility to be as honest as possible, because chances are it'll gain you more business in the end.
Sure.
But there's also that trade-off. So as you're going towards like autonomously selling like e-commerce solutions and stuff like that, at least that'll take off some of the discredits, but it'll put some other variables in there, such as shading and then that calculation. So
yeah,
there's a lot of different things.
Somewhat you mentioned just now that kind of sparked from what I've heard throughout the day and some of our other panels is just think more long-term, right? If you're trying to just get that one sale and you're trying to manipulate something just to make the numbers work, that can have a detrimental impact down the stream for your reputation. And we really have to make sure people are getting the systems they want. Now, Giant, I think you guys have a unique perspective, right? Because after these deals are sold, you as a manufacturer on the in-phase side, you're getting probably these calls from customers, right? And so I'm curious, as you guys think about it, if you had a magic wand, obviously you don't control the originator. You guys don't have your own sales force. You don't have your install. So you really are just accepting these handoffs, but you probably have people calling and be like, why isn't my battery doing what I was told it was going to do and these issues? So as you guys think about compliance what are some things you'd like to see reps do, or maybe your tool do to help with that, so that when a handoff happens with a manufacturer, it's done in a really good way that makes sure your guys' relationship with that customer is solid as well.
Yeah, perfect time, Pat. So this is it's a good problem to have for our side, actually, from a tools perspective. But basically, one thing we have done is from a development side of the activities that the having an advantage of the hardware engineers right next to us, that exactly what they're implementing in terms of, as I was talking about, the home energy management. So those algorithms are accurately and exactly implemented what the tool is modeling from a simulation perspective also. How exactly the behavior of a microinverter is going to be, how the behavior of our gateway under the different conditions of production, battery management or so, that can be accurately modeled inside the tool so that it is as accurate, other than, of course, having the shading and production and those kind of aspect, which I believe is a lot more visual to the homeowner also. They can go and visualize it. The things where things could go wrong in general, from based on my experiences, uh, uh, and how we are preventing it is one is the consumption. Actually, most homeowners may not even realize that what exactly their consumption model and things are done, and what their future appliances will look like, and how exactly they are going to behave. Trying to incorporate that element as accurate as possible, whether it's a green button data or whether it's a accurate modeling of to an appliance level, so that homeowner actually can say agree and exactly this is my consumption is going to be, which a sales rep is really talking to them. The second element which I see is the losses in the system. And they could be manipulated to any level, actually. System losses from an availability perspective, or any electrical losses, or any soiling losses or so. They could be enormous, actually, and they typically contribute between the tools a significant amount of numbers. And for that, what we are doing is, because we have the knowledge in terms of how the actual systems are behaving, we have how exactly a pair behaves with a corresponding panel to a microinverter in a particular geolocation, in a particular zip code, on a particular roof type. Also, that data can be brought back into the tool in terms of making a suggestion that, okay, if you were to do this availability losses, because I know even from the perspective that how many times a power outage happened in a particular zip code. And that power outage, otherwise we just simply model 2 to 3%, but it could be 8 to 9%, or based on last 5 years of data. And having access to that and providing that input inside the design tool will go further accuracy, where somebody cannot saying this is based on the historical performance of the systems or so, and this is how it is being modeled. So this is how we are incorporating to make sure that the compliance is managed, as well as things which are much more visual, as well as easy for a homeowner to understand, that they are not being misled in terms of what the system is going to be designed and how it is going to behave. They are as accurate as possible.
That's awesome. I think that feedback loop from what was actually installed and on the engineering side, as you mentioned, is important. I actually wonder, how often do installers look at what they proposed, get a site turned on, watch it for a month or two, and be like, oh, we got it right or not? I don't know how many installers actually go through that check, and they probably should. And that should then inform their sales process and maybe how they should make tweaks. But I think, again, thinking the short game, get something installed, move on to the next one, instead of maybe, okay, how can we optimize this going forward? Jason, I'm sure you got some comments here as we think about compliance and things on your end. What do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both us as fiduciaries and as responsible as software providers, as well as the rep. I think it's on us to provide guardrails to best inform the industry as to what our products are doing and what their honest limitations are, even if it is a limitation based on the user itself. I think solar is still a pretty new industry. We have certain areas where we need to mature, and there's a lot of new people joining the industry. And I think it's on us to educate them, not just during that onboarding to our platforms, but within the apps themselves, within the overall design experience. So for example, Scanify now has some remote design tools, and we have a couple places where we clearly state that they are going to be less accurate than the drone-based experience people know us for. On the rep side, a lot of houses are really different. It actually isn't easy to quote accurately, again, the way we define it, which is matching the installed project, right, to accurately design a remote system, especially in markets like the Northeast, where there's an old housing stock, or the Pacific Northwest, when you have 200-foot tall trees, or when there's new construction in Texas or other markets in the Sun Belt. So I actually think it's difficult to model, whether it's with AI or just general remote tools, But I do think it's on the rep to be informed on both the limitation of their tools, but the overall process itself, right? We're going to do a remote design now, and the on-site experience is probably going to true it up within a tolerance, and to walk the homeowner through that experience. And so I think that's where the rep needs to be as forthcoming as they can. And most homeowners are amenable to that as long as the rep is honest. And that's really goes back to the reputation of the rep and the reputation of either the installer or the sales org. I do want to offer one aside. An interesting trend that we are seeing is that more contractors that we're aware of are moving some form of site survey work to either the mid-sales process or the closing stage. And we're seeing that as a way to minimize change orders and revisions. We're seeing that as a way to stand out versus the competition, to say, no, we're going to give you a no true up, no change order design right here at point of closing. And it's another way that sales reps can basically guarantee their commissions, right?
Mhm.
We know that this is what my commission is going to look like because I got the accurate measurements and I looked at the main service panel. And even if you still roll a more technical truck post-sale, you're doing as much as you can pre-sale. And we've seen close rates increase by upwards of 20% by baking in some form of site survey or drone experience at the point of closing or a little earlier. So again, I think it's a combination of the software companies needing to be forthcoming about our limitations, as well as the reps needing to be educated about the overall process, but also getting a little creative when it comes to how they go about using these tools.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like the forthright you're talking about. If you're talking to a homeowner and say, look, this tool I'm using, it's going to be pretty close. We find a lot, though, that after a guy comes out and flies a drone or whatever our process, there might be a change. That's okay. Don't freak out if I call you and we have to make a change. And so I think we can use some of those things to our advantage, because even if we are more forthright, if you do talk about it more and talk about your process more and educate them and take some pictures around the house, like, you're probably just showing that it's going to be a better quality project as well. Because instead of just coming in and closing it real fast and bailing, you're really being more consultative. Jeremy, I know you want to add a thought on that?
Yeah, I think Jason's right on. And I think that it's really interesting to me. A lot of us have come from other industries. I've been in solar for 13 years, and I've been a part of developing a lot of the tools in the industry on the proposal side. And it used to be the standard that the knocker would complete a site survey, or in some of these tools, you could not even get a proposal until you took the site survey photos. So it's interesting how, as an industry, we've catered to the volume and not to the customer, and now it's coming back to bite us, right? So I agree 100% that needs to be moved up in the process.
Yeah, and that's interesting. It's kind of like, oh, just let technology do it faster so that I don't have to spend as much time with the customer. And maybe that's the wrong approach. Maybe it shouldn't just be, no, I want to bang this out as fast as possible, move on to the next one. We're losing that touch. Jason?
Yeah, I just want to add, I have mixed feelings on the velocity in which our industry is selling. The climate change or environmentalist, or we're all making money, like all that's great because we're getting more glass on the roof. That's the bigger problem we're trying to solve. But at the same token, I sometimes wonder if we are our own worst enemy in the industry with our approaches. I don't want to slow down the velocity in which we are scaling solar. I read a report this past weekend that said solar has beaten every single forecast predicted for the last decade. And I started in solar as an installer, and then I spent a lot of time on the research side. And people really work hard on those forecasts. Right. And so we're doing great when it comes to glass on the roof and getting the word out. But at the same token, we need to be forthcoming with what the overall development process entails. And that goes back to just communication. You can use solar AI, solar preliminary designs, solar drone-based designs, any types of design product out there, as long as you know where it fits in at the right stage of the value chain, and you're sharing that with your end customer. And ultimately, that also benefits us as an industry, because no one likes when your financing is rejected or has a stipulation put on it. No business wants to plan for that experience when they're missing a lot of working capital critical for growing their company. In the same token, no sales reps wants to miss the commission, and no homeowner wants to be told one thing and bait and switched on the other. And so I think all these tools fit very nicely, but we need to be honest with ourselves and the industry and our end customers as to where they fit and when and what that process looks like. And I think we'll move into this decade of solar's development, continuing to beat forecasts, but doing it in a very quality-oriented way.
Yeah, I like that. So I want to make sure people can add some Q&A. We'll probably start wrapping up here soon. I know there's a couple questions that have been put in here, and I think we talked about this one already. Kind of percentage do you think AI is accurate as per manual intervention? I think we talked about that trust but verify, and AI is doing a lot of it, but still not at a spot where it can be completely replaced. And we might be a few years out still. But as we're mentioning, maybe we don't even want that. Maybe there isn't a case to be made where AI does everything and the rep never talks to the homeowner. Maybe we're actually removing some trust there if we do that. I think this other one too, what do you guys think on the site survey part for accuracy designs? I think we've covered that too with companies who come to the home, maybe do some things ahead of time instead of doing it post-sale, and how that impacts. So if anybody else has other questions they want to add in, we can answer them here. I think just rounding this out, maybe I'll go to maybe Barty on this one. If we get to the kind of more tactical level and just some tips for people today, what are the most common mistakes you'd say that you'd see reps maybe making at the design stage?
I think it's actually a good question.
Or even your background and why you felt like you had to start early, like problem that you're trying to solve, and what are those things?
Exactly. So it actually comes from 2 points, right? So I actually started off as a solo salesperson, and I didn't know anything about AI when we actually had this problem. So when we looked at this, I couldn't tell you the difference between AI, ML, computer, any of this stuff. I just couldn't do it. So there's a long learning curve. But the reason why was actually it comes down to the customer acquisition cost and how difficult it really was to communicate the benefits of solar. So right now we're in this part where we're all saying, okay, now AI is just inaccurate or this and that. No, it's actually serving a great purpose, because the number one reason that people want to go solar, in my opinion, was the cost of solar, right? So can it save me money? And if that actually happens, then we're going to put glass on the roof. Great. But after that, what we're having right now is saying we had this very manual process where we drive out, we try to get the site measurements, then come manually and then get it. Now we're in a situation where we can roll it out within X amount of time, whether it's seconds, whether it's minutes, hours, doesn't matter. But we're in this position. Now we're here to optimize. So the inaccuracy, I couldn't do a design for the life of me. I couldn't tell you the pitch of a roof. I didn't know how to do it in full transparency. So I relied on a team of designers. And that team of designers, they had limitations on how many that they can do. Right now, a designer can edit a lot faster than having to recreate everything. And there's ways to improve that efficiency for sure. And we're seeing hopefully that reduction in customer acquisition costs as a result. But it could be anything from AI is not perfect because the problems are going to be random. So if the roof is not accurately drawn or estimated out, then there will be inaccuracy in the geometry of the home. Or if the elevation is not there, then it can be an inaccuracy in shading, right? So there's multiple different things. But as we're seeing these problems, we're helping to optimize for these problems. And we're slowly but surely getting there. And I actually believe I like speed and automation, predominantly because it's going to reduce the cost and actually put more glass. Now, can we actually fine tune that to get it more accurate? I think it's a good benefit. So I'm sorry I didn't answer the question directly, but
yeah, it's good context. Let's jump to a question here. I'm going to give this one to Giant because you've played in the design space, obviously CAD and permitting as well. Your tool goes farther beyond. So the question is, how do permit designs come into play with AI design?
Yeah, I think so. Basically, yeah, thanks, Pat. Actually, so we have added actually the permit plans and creation also as a part of the design tool itself, in addition to the electrical design as well. So this is mostly from a development perspective. So the AI plays the game because now you're dealing with 16,000 AHJs. Each one has 300 parameters. Then you're talking about your vicinity, property line, weather, structural design, the type of data sheet so you're dealing with data now here, a whole bunch of data, and then you have to create an accurate picture from a power plant set perspective. So could be a baseline algorithm behind the scene which are making sure that you are able to converge for a design within a minute or so, instead of taking forever to really design an accurate AutoCAD structure or accurate PDF file. So that's where the AI comes into the picture, saying that, okay, I have a predictive method of creating based on this data set and basic algorithm. I can say that this is how the design will look like. And now I go further refine it and define it from a development perspective. And we go and put some kind of a learnings algorithm, put some GPUs around it, and throw it in to create an accurate model within an accurate model, the accurate depiction of the design in a which will be deployed actually and be approved by the AG within a minute or so. So that's where the AI come into picture. So this is behind the scene, I would say, from a development point of view, may not be visible as such that you are actually detecting something or you're predicting something, but it is working behind the scene.
No, that's great. Maybe to offer the same question to Jason too on how design and AI leads into the permitting side. If you have thoughts there.
I think it can help optimize things as it relates to stringing, as it relates to racking layout, obviously optimizing for the geometry of panel placement. But I also do think that at the point of plan set and the final engineering documents pre-permitting, that is where I think the engineer, the human itself, right now at least, is most valuable. And it's that final check before you're moving it into permitting, bomb, and install. A lot of, I think my colleagues here are pointing out that AI at this stage is really a co-pilot. And I think it has a chance to replace certain roles or functions of a person's role throughout the value chain. But I think as it relates to the plan set, it will inform parts of it, but having a human, an engineer ideally, finalize it beforehand is critical. Another example that I've been thinking about while we've all been talking is currently AI is not going to inform if you need a main service panel upgrade, right? AI might not know where to put your EV charging unit internally within the electrical of the house. It's not going to inform the structural integrity of your attic's rafters, right? So there are just things that right now, whether it's because of remote data, geospatial data, or how we pick up data within the house, where AI will have a limitation in the near term. Maybe that could change in the long term, or maybe for new construction, it significantly evolves. But I think at some point, a human, ideally at that final stage before the revision, the call off would occur, that's where you have a human involved, and AI informs a lot of the other stuff leading up to it.
Awesome. Guys, this has been awesome. I've learned a ton. I appreciate all you joining, giving your unique perspectives. As we're learning on many of these panels, there are a lot of ways to solve the problems in solar. And many of you guys are approaching it from different angles. All are really good and can be useful to people. And I took some notes and I hope our listeners gathered some good stuff too. Brent, I think from a timing perspective, we actually put in a lunch break, I think, into our day. So our next panel kicks off in about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
We're going to have our awesome panel with sales orgs, and that's going to be a good one. Some of the top sales orgs in the country going head to head here. So it's going to be fun to see.
It's
Any other
called
thoughts? Close this out.
Solar Sales Insights, How the Pros Stay on Top of Their Game is the title of it. So that'll be great. I would just want to say thank you to the panelists. Thank you for all those who attended. If you do want to stay tuned, our panelists, you're welcome to jump off, but we do have a demo video for how to create an areolytic deal inside of Enerflo.
Ever find yourself tapping your foot waiting for a solar design? Say goodbye to the waiting game because Enerflo has teamed up with Areolytic, an AI solar design tool that allows reps to easily and near instantly create solar designs on the fly. Let's take a closer look at the Areolytic sales flow in action. To begin, open a deal in Enerflow's V2 platform and complete the pre-qualification questions. Then, move on to the consumption profile by selecting New Consumption Profile. Filling out this consumption profile is crucial for summoning the Areolytic AI magic. So choose a utility, input the desired consumption data, and click Done. Then move forward with the design by selecting Next. Within the Design tab, select New Design, and as long as the Areolytic plugin has been enabled, you'll spot it in the dropdown. Once Areolytic is selected, a pop-up will appear to begin the design request. Name your design, pick the consumption profile, and choose the equipment types. Then click Continue. From here, Areolytic's AI technology gets to work by whipping up a design. As Areolytic does its thing, a site map unfolds in real time, allowing you to watch your solar masterpiece come to life in 90 seconds flat. When the design is ready, you're transported into the design page where panels have been strategically placed for optimal production and alignment with your desired consumption offset. From here, you can interact with the areolytic iframe to toggle on and off the panels and explore various viewing options. It's important to note that after an areolytic design request is submitted, you will not be able to submit another areolytic design request through the design section. However, you have some options. First, you can choose Clone Design, which creates a new areolytic design for you within the same deal, allowing you to enable a different layout of panels without losing the other layout. You can also chat with a designer, and Enerflow's design support team can make changes to the site design or equipment selected. Once you're satisfied with the design, click the Save button. Finally, move to the proposal stage by clicking the Next button and selecting Create Proposal. Within the pop-up window, fill out the required information and then choose Save and Calculate Pricing. Now, choose View Proposal and navigate to the System Design to preview an iframe of the areolytic design. From here, you can adjust the panels as needed. And there you have it, the Enerflo and Areolytic Dream Team, revolutionizing the way you create solar designs.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.